Welcome back into the Mental Game. I'm your host, Brandon Saho, and this week's guest is Xavier head coach Sean Miller, a guy who's been around the game of college basketball for decades now, so this is an amazing conversation with someone who's been at the top of the sport. In this episode, we talked to Coach Miller about his own mental health, his coaching career, what it was like to take a step back and a year away from the game after losing that Arizona job. But now we talk a lot about what it's been like for Coach Miller to come back for this homecoming at Xavier, that and much, much more in this awesome conversation with Xavier head coach Sean Miller. But before we get started, let's kick things off with our mental health tip of the week, powered by 1 in 5. Self-confidence is a component of mental health that everyone can improve. Conscious choices in our daily lives can lead to great benefits in self-confidence. Positive self-talk, setting goals, celebrating your victories, and recognizing that you are not defined by a single action are all great ways to support your self-confidence. We all have come so far. We are beautifully intricate individuals with unique journeys. Even though we may not be exactly where we want to be, we all deserve to be proud of all that we've done to become who we are. And if you or someone you know needs help finding a therapist or any mental health resources, go ahead and scan the QR code that'll be up this entire episode in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and it'll take you directly to 1 in 5's homepage, where their mission is to prevent suicide by stopping the stigma and starting the conversation. Speaking of conversations, now it is time for the latest edition of the Mental Game with Xavier head coach Sean Miller.
What's up, everybody? I am here for another episode of the Mental Game with Xavier men's head basketball coach Sean Miller. Coach, I appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
The first thing I ask everyone on this podcast is, what does mental health mean to you? So I'll ask you the same thing. What has mental health meant to you throughout your life, and how have you used that to your advantage?
I think there's a lot of layers to the question. I think the one thing that you learn, I think, with just mental health, the mental part of the game that I'm a part of, basketball, just in general, is I think it's exclusive to each individual. You know, how I see it has a lot to do with how I grew up, the experiences that I have gone through, maybe the stage of life that I'm at, both the negatives, the positives, the setbacks, all that we go through in life. And I think that, when you talk to 10 different people, we could all look at it differently from that perspective. However, maybe the similarity is that I think that the more experiences that you go through, the older that you get, the more you recognize the importance of the mental aspect of everything. And obviously, if you just say it as mental health, it's as important, if not more important, than maybe anything that we do, whether it's with our own family, ourselves, and then certainly with the organization that we're a part of or in charge of.
You're back here at Xavier. This is a special place to you. You were at Arizona prior. You had, a really good job there, a really good job here. The last 2 years, what has that been like for you after you lost that job at Arizona? You come back to Xavier. Just take me through that timeline of where your mental was, because a lot of people could just fold and not bounce back and want to come back to a place like Xavier when stuff like that happens to somebody. It's adversity. How were you able to power through these last 2 years?
Well, I would say it's more than two. First of all, I think that when you reflect on something that happens, especially if it's negative, let's look at it as an obstacle or adversity. When you now have the opportunity to kind of get through it and reflect back on it, you see things happen much, much earlier than the actual maybe incident, or in my case, my time running out at Arizona.
Sure.
And you learn from it. If you could go back in time, which you can't, these are some things that I would look at more seriously. I would do differently. I would be more aware of. So with that, I think now as you have the opportunity to move forward, you have that same mindset of learning from circumstance, seeing it for what it is. And, when you read books, and oftentimes when you talk to older, wiser people, they will always tell you that sometimes your best opportunity to learn, or the growth that you'll experience as a person, happens when you deal with adversity, when you have to get through something or overcome it. And, at Arizona, there's a lot of layers. I loved my time there. I enjoyed it. But my time ran out. And I think that now, as it applies to the second part of your question, me returning here to Xavier, I want to return back better, more equipped, more versatile, learning from both the good and the bad that happened in my 12 years at Arizona. Not just the ending, but just looking at it from what it is from start to finish. And I think the more experiences you have, I think the more tools that you have in your toolbox to be better as a coach, better as a person, and in the mental health part of things, maybe better equipped with handling the highs and lows of today's world of sports, which is very public. It's very immediate, and it can certainly do you in if you're not ready.
I remember when I talked to you at the introductory press conference when you got hired here at Xavier a few months ago. You talked about spending time with your family and your kids and your wife. What was that last year like where you weren't employed and you're kind of having some time, I'm sure, to find more out about yourself, spend time with the family? How did you spend that time?
Well, I spent a lot of time with my wife, Amy. My 3 sons, they're grown. So my oldest son is a lawyer, an attorney in Denver, Colorado. Our middle son last year would have been a graduate assistant at St. Mary's College on the basketball staff with Randy Bennett. And our youngest son would have been a sophomore in college at Arizona. So did I talk to them more? Yes. Did I feel maybe more connected and more present when I had my conversations with them? I did, but they weren't in the house.
Right.
The person that was with me all day, every day was my wife, and her and I spent more time together maybe this past year than we had in maybe the previous, 5-7 years.
Sure.
Just because of the way the job works in college. It's just you're constantly on the grind, either recruiting or traveling, playing games, and all the things that happen. But, I would say that just being more present and aware when you're not responsible or in charge of something, whether it be a team, whether it be an organization, you see things much, much differently. Sometimes you have the feeling of isolation because, in my world, you're always on a bus. You're always in a locker room. You're always in dialogue with the coaches that are on your staff, the players, et cetera. When all that kind of comes to a close, there's no warning. There's nobody filling that void. So I think the conversations tend to be more with the people that you love, and with the kind of the pressure off. Really, you see life differently. I'll give you a great example. Halloween, Christmas. If you're in college basketball, you have a practice, a game. You're either finishing a practice, finishing a game, or getting ready for the next.
Right.
Although you might be with family and friends over the holidays, your mind is always on, are the players okay? Are they going to come back? Inevitably, something happens. And as much as you try to celebrate what you should be celebrating with your own family, I think what you find is you're always, at least I was, distracted in a way that kind of takes you away from the actual dinner that you're at or the place that you're at. When a year ago you have none of that, no responsibility, no next game, no practice, you're really able to be completely present. And it was really a weird feeling. And it may sound strange, but I think you're more aware of, if I get the opportunity to coach again, I don't have to be as distracted. It will be okay. I can be even more present and enjoy it. By the way, that will work as well.
Right.
So I think it's those little moments, single days that I think reminded me a year ago of it doesn't have to always be all-consuming, meaning my job.
Now, would you say your wife was your biggest rock? I mean, probably throughout your whole marriage, but especially that last year?
For sure. And her and I have known each other since really 9th, 10th grade in high school, dated in high school, went to college together.
Yeah.
You know, we've been married for 29 years. To say she's seen it all would probably be an understatement.
Yeah.
Especially in the world of college sports. She's seen the highs of highs and certainly the lows that can come with it as well. But no doubt, and I think that we spent a lot more time, and it was good for us, and I think it was a reminder for me how important that relationship is, regardless of whether you're a coach or not.
You talked about, not being around basketball, and I'm sure, helping young men, turning them into men is something you're super passionate about. Obviously, mental health for young people is very important. What is your goal when you bring kids into your program to make sure that, they're not just right physically, but also mentally?
Well, right. I think your responsibility has always been, but maybe more so today. Today it's between social media and just how information is exchanged in our world. Communication is different. It's quicker. It's more direct. Sometimes it's not as accurate.
Right.
I think you as the person and people that are in charge of a group of 18 to 22-year-olds, I think it's important that you're constantly aware of how they're doing, both on the court and off. The staff that I have is, essential to our success. You can't just in your best attempt as one person, even though you're the head coach, communicate as much as you would like with everybody.
Right.
And you rely on each other. We're a team in and of itself, our staff, and how we communicate with our players, with their support system, making sure that they're okay in the classroom, off the court, when things are good, when things aren't good. On the weekend, when maybe right now we're not around them as much.
Sure.
I think it has to be constant dialogue and communication. And I think when you have that regular, good, informative communication, I think that's when you can prevent, some deterioration from happening. You can see maybe problems arising earlier, and we can help solve them, as opposed to gaps in communication when long stretches come, when you're not in touch with today's 18, 22-year-old. It's amazing how quickly different things can happen to them. Not always bad, but I think one of the things that we're trying to do is just communicate directly and regularly as a coaching staff with our team to them.
Is there maybe one or two players that kind of stand out to you that this is a loaded question, but just that you've been able to kind of be a father figure for or be there for, that really stand out to you where they were going through something and you guys really were able to form not just coach to player, but a friendship, mentorship that really made a difference in both of your guys' lives?
The one thing that you learn, and I learned it last year because a lot of former players that I coached earlier in my tenure at Arizona, because I was there for 12 years, right? A big gap between the end and the beginning.
Yeah.
And also players that I coached here at Xavier the first time, which was a 13 to 18 year period of time. Hearing from them, I think what you learn is it's not really that one person that sticks out. Maybe certain situations you want to help somebody through.
Right.
But what you hope is that you've been able to impact and help and mentor and guide and teach really virtually everybody that you've been a part of. It isn't always fun and games. Like, I think the word accountability doesn't mean being tough on somebody.
Right.
It's sometimes holding them to a standard that they need to be held to so that they can achieve more, that they can become the best that they can be. And that type of communication isn't always warm and fuzzy, but one of the things that I've found is sometimes those moments that you go through with a player when they have an opportunity to grow themselves and look back on it, sometimes that was the most powerful learning or teaching moment between you and them as a coach player. I had a young man at Arizona, one situation, his name was Ray Smith. Ray's from Las Vegas, coming out of high school. He was very much a late bloomer. So he wasn't an anointed high school McDonald's All-American, but Ray was well on his way towards potentially being a high school McDonald's All-American through just an incredible 11th and 12th grade season. So, 17, 18 years old is when it really I think, came to life for Ray. And he had a really devastating injury. He tore his ACL in an event before his senior year of high school. And he was committed to us at Arizona. We stuck with that commitment. A lot of young people can overcome ACL tears in today's world. So Ray sat out his senior year of high school, may have played at the very end, rehabbed. We helped him rehab. Then in the summer before his freshman year, he got cleared to play for us as a true freshman in the fall, and tore his ACL a second time. I think the second one was his other ACL. So if you can imagine, he wasn't able to become a McDonald's All-American. He still was able to come to Arizona, missed his senior year of high school. Even though he was with us in his summer before his freshman year, he was more in the rehab phase versus the team phase. Then he suffers a second ACL tear, misses his entire freshman year, and then in the next summer. And then finally, after 2 ACLs, getting ready now to play for his first time in our annual red-blue game.
Yeah.
He tore his, I think his first ACL a second time. So if you can imagine somebody that's between 17 and 18 years old, went through 3 consecutive ACL injuries, and now 3 consecutive surgeries. I think one of the things in sports you learn is when somebody gets injured, they really go through a depressive part of their life. They're isolated.
Yeah.
Even in your best attempt to engage them and keep them with the team, they're still not able to do everything that the team does.
Right.
And it's some real dark moments. Somebody who's going through 3 of those. But, at the end of the day, Ray ended up, keep in mind, he went through all this before he ever went to class a single day at Arizona. He graduated in 4 years.
Wow.
So he was able to stay with us, stay on full scholarship. We gave him the academic support. And to his credit, he fought all the way through to get his degree, which is very meaningful. And then right now, he's an intern with the Utah Jazz. He's
awesome.
actually worked in sports psychology at Grand Canyon University. He's done some graduate work, and he's giving back. So, there's a story that really isn't about the points scored or the championships won or, the feel-good story of, look, he's in the NBA today. But this is one that he could have left us a lot earlier, flunked out of school, not been able to finish what he started. But to see him, still involved in sports with a college degree, helping young people, I think in some ways is a story that, for me, I don't want to say that's what it's all about, but I think when these times happen, I'm really proud of Ray, but I'm also proud of our program, myself, our staff, playing whatever role we could have played and did play in helping him.
That's an amazing, motivational, inspirational story because, like you said, when adversity hits, you can just go down. And he had to go through it 3 times, stuck with it, and now he's giving back. It's a full circle moment or full circle story that I think will help a lot of people that are watching this. Last thing I'll ask is advice to a young coach, someone that wants to get into this, thinking about it. Maybe they are in their first 1 to 5 years of it and are a GA or assistant or a video coordinator. What would be your biggest advice to somebody wanting to get into this profession?
I think it starts with you have to have a real passion for the game of basketball. You have to love the game of basketball. It has to be as much about the game, because I think if the passion and the love for the sport itself is your starting point, then the players that play it are at the top of that list. Your reason for wanting to coach inevitably comes to, the love for the competition, the love for developing young people, to just the camaraderie and the ups and downs of being on a bus, in a locker room, after a win, after a loss, seeing everything. But you have to have that passion. If you just get in it to get in it, I think like a lot of industries, you'll pull up short. I don't know if you'll ever be as fulfilled. But I think in particular in today's world of sports, whatever sport that is, the starting point has to really be, you have to really love it. You have to be passionate about the game itself. And that's where I was very lucky growing up in the house that I did, son of a high school coach in a basketball family, a sports crazy area, Pittsburgh. I always loved the game. That's why I played the game. And when you love it, it's easier to work hard. And I think it's easier to get through those those pockets of time that inevitably are going to strike. The injury to Ray Smith, losing a job, the ups and downs that come with what we do. But that passion is what I would say has to be your starting point.
Awesome. I appreciate you giving me your time today, Coach. Good luck this year as you
Thank
turn
you.
to Xavier. That's another episode of The Mental Game in the book. We'll be back next week.
And I really appreciate Coach Miller for being open and for his time. We recorded this podcast episode before the season tipped off. So, as you know, if you're a Cincinnati or a Xavier fan, it is a big week with the Crosstown Shootout coming up this weekend. So once again, thanks to Coach Miller for coming on The Mental Game. Next week, right back here on The Mental Game, we have another big guest. It is Browns legend Joe Thomas, and this is one of my favorite episodes because Thomas opens up a lot about his own mental health, the struggles he had up in Cleveland when they had 10 straight losing seasons when he was playing for the Browns. We talk about that and a lot more in an episode you will not want to miss. That's coming up next week, right back here on The Mental Game.